I would really like to hear you tell a story of what happened in Michigan with the hospital and all that shit. That's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Yes.
Why is that fascinating?
Well, if you could tell a story of where you worked, you were a nurse, tell us you were there firsthand and the COVID thing, and then from that to the point where they're like, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, get the fuck out, and 75% got left or got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Would you tell that story?
I mean, yeah. I just can't talk about patients necessarily because it's
that's fine. But anything you can tell us, what was going on? Give it, because you hear a lot of stuff in the news about the hospitals, the ICU wards are overrun and excess capacity. But you were the second or third largest hospital in Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you were a nurse there, and you were treating patients that came in with the what's the politically correct word? The thing we won't speak about.
Oh no.
Oh.
And you treated them?
Yeah.
And after all that, they decided that everybody had to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And then how you ended up down here.
Okay. I can talk about it.
Cool.
Okay.
Because you were on the front lines.
I was on the front lines.
So tell us about that. What was it like? What'd you see? What did you hear?
So I was working in the emergency room. So we basically kind of started the process and then shipped them upstairs to either the COVID unit or ICU. My ICU only had 8 beds. So when they say, oh, the ICU is full, there's not enough beds. Well, no shit, there's only 8 beds.
And how big was that hospital in the state of Michigan?
It was the second largest hospital in the state of Michigan.
The second largest hospital in Michigan's got 8 whole ICU beds.
Yeah.
So there's never very many patients there. Well, it's even I hear during the holidays, during flu season, it's usually pretty highly occupied. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but in ICU you'd see a lot of heart attacks, a lot of overdoses, especially during the winter months. You would see a lot of overdoses. You just see so many other things that would also occupy the beds. So not only do you have the overdoses, the heart attacks, the strokes, the tumors, you have COVID as well. So you have multiple different patients trying to fight over these 8 beds. So when they say, oh, there's not enough beds, well, yeah, there's only 8 beds. So
at the second largest hospital in the whole state of Michigan, there's 8 whole beds.
Yeah.
So when you see in the news, they're like, oh my God, the ICUs are overrun. Oh, it's the end of the world. What are you thinking?
They're not telling the whole truth. Because, yeah, there's not enough beds for all these patients, but...
So it's technically true, but really it's a lie by omission because they don't give you any context.
Yeah,
there's 8 fucking beds.
So, people who don't know the hospital layout or they don't know, they're not in healthcare, they think, oh my gosh, it's time to freak out. This is big, this is serious, everyone's dying. There's not enough beds, there's not enough ventilators. Well, what you don't know is that we just don't have the resources, to begin with, before this even started. So now that we have this pandemic coming onto us, there's even less resources. So it came to a point where, do I give this bed to someone who has a 50% chance of living or a 15% chance of living? Do I give this ventilator to someone who has, a 60% or a 12%? That's crazy. So the doctors really had to make that choice.
The life and death decision.
Yeah. And they would always choose the one that had a greater percent chance of living because there wasn't enough resources. And it wasn't because of the pandemic. It was just because of how our hospital was set up and ran.
Scary.
Yeah, and so we all were extremely overworked when it first came out. A lot of people quit because they were scared because we didn't know what we were walking into, truly.
Because you saw what is now known as Chinese propaganda, where the people would collapse or fall forward, and right at the last second they would catch themselves. So you could tell that they were filming this shit and releasing it on social media. And then Army was picking up and going, oh my God, people are collapsing in the street. It's like the bubonic plague.
Yeah, so
Got locked down.
We didn't know what we were walking into each shift, like especially in the beginning.
So you guys were afraid that it was really deadly and it was going to take everybody out, including you.
Even like our CEO would send out emails like daily to us staff and just like making it like we weren't allowed to leave the county, we weren't allowed to like travel, like we had like all these restrictions. So we're like, oh shit, like it's like a really big thing. This was like the beginning of March. So lots of people like did quit because they're like, oh, like I have a family. There was a lot of rules to where we had to be so many miles within the hospital, even on our days off, in case we get called in. Thankfully, I only lived 2 miles from my work, so I was able to kind of like go home when I needed to, but that wasn't a like possibility for a lot of people. So I remember.
How many hours a week were you working?
I was working almost like 80 hours a week.
Damn.
And
That's how many hours a day?
I mean, I was working like anywhere from 18 to 20 hours a day. There was multiple days where I would stay there, shower, sleep in an empty bed, and go back to the floor.
Damn.
And I remember my one shift, I pulled in to the parking lot, and there was just travel trailers everywhere. And I got to the point where the nurses got so fed up, they would bring travel trailers into the parking lot, and they lived there for months on end. There was lots
of the Winnebago out.
Yes, there was lots of doctors that would do the same thing because our doctors, we don't have set doctors. Our doctors are hired out, so you'll have one doctor one night in the ER, and then you might not ever see that doctor again. So these doctors that are traveling for 3, 4, 5 hours to work this night shift, like they would just stay in our parking lot, and basically they lived there in our parking lot for a couple months. But we were all overworked because the staffing, and then you had other like staff members like getting sick, and they got to the point where they would say, oh, like, because we were getting tested once a week, and if we didn't have symptoms but we still were testing positive, we still had to stay on the floor.
So even if you had COVID, you had to keep working.
Yeah.
Because there was nobody else otherwise.
Yeah. And
but then you would have symptoms, wouldn't like someone got COVID?
Yeah, that was
and like
there
symptoms,
there was a couple months there where I didn't have a single, like I had COVID in like April when it happened, and it just felt like a normal cold, but like also like I like work out, I am very active, so I knew like if I got it, it wouldn't be terrible. I don't know if it was all the hospitals, I don't know if it was just mine or if I just got some really shitty doctors that I was working with at night, but they would automatically swab someone for COVID if they had a cough or they had a fever. They would never like swab them for strep throat, influenza, nothing. Everything was all of a sudden COVID. And in the wintertime, it's flu season. Like that's just, it's flu season. Why wouldn't you swab someone for influenza before you do COVID? Like it just before COVID, we had like a routine of what swabs came in order. So say you swab this like for strep, it came back negative, so we're gonna go to influenza. That just kind of went out the window when COVID happened, and everything was a COVID swab.
So they just stopped swabbing for everything else?
Yeah. We threw out probably 200 boxes of influenza and strep swabs, because they expired. And
did you ever ask anybody like why that was, or did it come down from the top that this is all we're looking at?
I don't know if it was the doctors making that call or if it was like our CEO, CFO. I don't really know where that came from.
Because they were getting extra money if somebody was COVID positive, right?
They weren't getting extra money if someone was COVID positive.
If
someone passed away and their death certificate said COVID positive, they were getting about $3,500 per patient that passed away.
What?
So there was,
including people that were in like motorcycle accidents.
I know I had a incident one night. It was snowing, and snow obviously is dangerous when it's at night and it's black ice. You can't see. There's lots of accidents, especially that come into the ER. I had a patient that did pass away. And I knew the family, and they put COVID on the death certificate. And I said, well,
for the extra $3,500.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah. So
they didn't try to even do a test after? There was no test at all.
No, the
here's
patient was dead before they got to me.
What's so interesting is I think it was the governor of New York, the woman that just took over for Cuomo. She said that now they're like separating their numbers for people that died from COVID and with COVID. And so like that particular person, the hospital got an extra $3,500.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like a lot,
so
but
you
it
got
adds
an
up.
overly sensitive PCR test that, they're positive too. Thanks, Uncle Sam, $3,500. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
I can now buy my yacht in the Riviera.
So a doctor would probably get more than $50,000 in a year if that happened.
Our doctors were on contracted out, so I don't think.
So the hospital got that.
Yeah, it was all of our
business
president.
was booming because of COVID.
Yeah. So
everything was about COVID, even if it wasn't.
But at the cost of people's lives, you're just treating them like a number.
One thing that I learned working in the hospital is they don't care about their employees. They don't care. I mean, I don't want to say they don't care about their patients because if it wasn't
personal,
for them,
it's just business.
Mm-hmm. They're all money hungry. All of those presidents, CEOs, CFOs, they're all money hungry because at the end of the day, they get a cut for what the hospital brings in.
Mm.
So, by writing off all these ridiculous deaths as COVID, they pocketed that money. We never they never did anything for us staff. Community members would bring in food for us, which was so nice, so sweet, but we never got anything from the hospital. They gave us a sugar cookie one day when we walked in. I remember this day so clearly.
That was your bonus, was a sugar cookie?
Yeah, everyone was getting Christmas bonuses, everything.
Which is unhealthy, by the way.
We got nothing, and we usually get a Christmas bonus. We got nothing that year. And you can't tell me after all that money they made for COVID, they couldn't afford to give us a Christmas bonus. Mm-hmm. But we walked in, and...
Well, a lot of surgeries got put off, though, didn't they?
Yeah, so
and then
they
a lot
canceled.
of people didn't get diagnosed that should have gotten diagnosed because they were too scared to come in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And now they come in and they're like, hey, sorry, you need to get your affairs in order. It's just too far.
Yeah,
you need to come in sooner.
They canceled our whole entire surgical unit. So all of those nurses, the techs, the doctors, they were all out of a job because as soon as COVID hit, they closed down our whole OR. And we only had 4 ORs, but that's still 150 employees. And that's 150 employees that had to go look for a job elsewhere in the middle of COVID when in Michigan, it was a blue state. So every single thing was shut down. Everything. Even after Florida started opening up and all these other. Yeah. So we our grocery stores weren't open. If you wanted to go to the grocery store, there was only Walmart open. And they would have it roped off and you only could go to the certain areas they wanted you to shop in. If you wanted to go to the baby section and get a toy, you couldn't do that. You only could go get diapers. They had.
But you could order the toy from Amazon online.
Yeah, but that's not the point. You know what I mean?
If you owned a retail store, you couldn't sell any toys because you were closed because you were not essential.
Mm-hmm. And that was even after that got lifted for the whole U.S. Michigan still kept that. Michigan's still on lockdown. It's only
That's Whitmer, right? Governor Whitmer?
Yeah, it's only 50% capacity. I think she's a lunatic, but that's my personal opinion. She kept us in lockdown for about 8 months, where she nothing could be open. Not salons, not nothing. It wasn't until July or August, I want to say, that salons were able to open up. And she was you shouldn't, she was encouraging people to call the police on your neighbor if you saw a car in their driveway that doesn't belong there.
To that point.
Because that meant that somebody was visiting.
Yes.
It shouldn't be, because you weren't allowed to do that.
Yes. But there was a article that came out and it was verified through video that she was up at her lake house with hosting a graduation party for her daughter on the lake.
On Instagram?
Yes, it was all over.
Oh my God!
So she hosted a.
Didn't she come down here to Florida?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, wouldn't surprise me.
She vacationed somewhere and then she got caught.
It wouldn't surprise me. And then there was an article that came out that she was trying to put her boat in, like get it like dewinterized for the summer.
I heard about that.
And her husband said, "Don't you know who my wife is? She's the governor, blah blah blah." And they didn't dewinterize it. They said, "I'm sorry, go somewhere else. Like, we lost lots of business because of you."
Damn.
So I mean,
it backfired on them.
Wow.
Damn.
yeah. But I mean, Michigan's still locked down. Like, restaurants can't be open like fully yet.
The whole entire state?
Yeah. Worked in the ER. If you were in the ER, the COVID unit, the OB, which I mean makes sense because the babies, or ICU, you had to wear an N95, which basically is a mask that suction cups to you, and then you had to wear the like regular mask over top of it, and you had to wear a gown, you had to wear a face mask, and you had to wear goggles.
Like it was a bubonic plague.
Yeah, yeah. So can you imagine being, a 5-year-old that comes in with a broken arm, like, and you have that treating you? Like, I would be scared as a 20.
With a bone sticking out of your arm.
Yeah, I'd be scared as a 21-year-old, let alone a little like 5 or however old, like a child. And then same thing, like when a mother's delivering a baby, they weren't allowed to have like any like family up there.
You're good.
They weren't allowed to have like any family up there, which I mean, I guess like makes sense, because like they didn't want like the baby exposed or bringing like the virus up there. However, how comfortable do you think that mom felt not knowing who was even treating her? Because you couldn't see who we were through all of our all of our like PPE. Like, you couldn't see us. You couldn't see a face. You couldn't see anything. You only could hear a voice. I have a picture.
So you look like a robot.
I have a picture that I sent my mom, and I still have it on my phone to this day. You couldn't even tell it was me. Couldn't even tell. So how comfortable does these patients feel when they can't even, like, see who's treating them? Like, how are they supposed to feel comfortable? There was, like, multiple times where someone would ask, "Can you just pull your mask down? Can you just pull your mask down? I just want to see who I'm talking to. I just want to see who's treating me. Like, I just want to be comfortable." And they also, in the ER, we couldn't have, like, visitors, so no matter if they were anywhere from 18 to whatever, like however old they were, no matter what their condition was, they weren't allowed to have a family member with them. If they were a minor, they could have one family member with them, and that's it. So how scary is it when, you think you're having a heart attack or whatever your problem is, and not being able to have your husband or your wife there to hold your hand through it? Or
by yourself.
You're in your final moments and your family's forbidden to be there.
Even when a patient was passing away with COVID, their family never got to be with them. It was us staff members holding their hand while they were taking their last breaths.
Dang.
And that was honestly what really, really hurt me, was watching all of this going on and knowing, like, there's nothing really being done. Like, if that was my grandmother going through that, I'd want her to be with at least with my grandfather, at least. And they got nothing. They got a staff member who they didn't even know what we looked like.
And we are human, and we need that like affection and like have someone there to hold our hand.
So that was cruel and unusual punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't even host like funerals too for your loved ones.
No.
That's the most.
I did want to say something. I know when it came to like the bodies, I know they were put in garbage bags. It was the correct way so COVID doesn't spread, but at the same time, it kind of sucked.
Well, the body also starts to release a lot of oils and shit, and starts to decompose, and so you got to have it in something that will hold all that shit in. You don't want all the juices going everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That is what a normal body goes in, no matter before COVID or after COVID. In our morgue, we had one freezer. You'd put the body in the bag and you'd stack them in the freezer until the funeral home came in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like,
that's crazy.
And
you're like a frozen pizza when you're dead. Otherwise, you like start to liquefy.
And guess who does that? That's not a doctor. That's us. That was us. It's like having to carry there was like multiple people. I'm tiny, okay? I'm like 110 pounds. Like, I can't do much with dead weight. And having to having to put a dead weight into a bag
Yikes.
Oh my gosh.
It is what it is.
The
sister.
morbid humor is real.
But having to, like, I mean, they're taking like 4 or 5
I grew up
us.
in a family of military veterans, so
No.
they saw firsthand the carnage of life, especially war.
And then you would just stack them in the freezer and the funeral home would come.
Now, when all of this is going on, like, you have to do this, how did you feel? Like, how was your first time doing it? Did you feel like it was right? Did you feel like you had, like, something pulling you back that it wasn't right?
You're talking about, like, treating, like, COVID?
No, just putting these after, like, they pass away and
You're
they're
taught
put
that in
into...
school. You're taught that in school.
I didn't know you were taught that in school.
Yeah. It's just kind of, you do it in your rotations, like when you're in school, and I guess you just never think anything past it.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Like, what else would you do with the dying body?
But
like,
I thought it would be some other people doing it, though. I didn't think it was the nurses themselves putting them into the freezers.
The nurses do everything. Like, like, if you're a nurse, like, I have, like, tremendous respect for you. Like, obviously, I'm not in that field anymore. I couldn't do it, couldn't handle it. But they do so much, and they're so underappreciated. Like, any single person who has been a nurse or is still a nurse, like, all the power to you. Because it is really, really hard work. And it's not meant for everyone, clearly. Look at me.
I do a lot of phone sessions with doctors and nurses, and it's like General fucking Hospital. The old soap opera that was on. Y'all are freaks.
Would you say the pay is worth it?
It's understandable, though. You go through something traumatic like that. It's you kind of see the fragility of life every day.
Yeah.
The carnage of life.
I think my hospital, the pay wasn't worth it. I can't speak for everyone. I know that lots of people do travel nursing, and the pay that's where the money's at, and it might be worth it. I mean, they're talking really good money.
Yeah.
How do you qualify to be a travel nurse? Like, you have to have some quality before?
No, you just have to be a BSN. So have your 4 years, and then you could just, instead of going to a hospital or going to a doctor's office, you just get signed with a travel agent. So it's not, I mean, it's hard work because you're going to a new hospital every 4 to 6 weeks. So you're having to relearn all the staff members, all of, like, the policies and procedures. Because even though, like, saving someone's life, like, CPR is, basic, every single hospital seems to have a different, like, I don't want to say, like, routine, I guess maybe is the word I'm looking for when someone codes.
Yeah.
And even to, like, there's a certain place where, like, each nurse has to be, and each, like, lab person and x-ray person has to be, like, when someone's coding, like, each hospital is different when that comes to, like, that layout at the bed. So travel nursing, it's just a lot of, like, you better be a good memorizer because you never know when you're going to have to use that.
Does it fill it up really quickly, like, to be a travel, like, nurse? Does a lot of nurses want to do it because they know the money's there, or no?
I think yes and no. So my hospital required the vaccine, and a lot of us didn't get it, and they gave us a month to get it.
When did that happen in this whole timeline of events?
I want to say it was, like, springtime, like May, April. So, like,
of 2021?
Yeah, it's like 9 months ago, maybe. So they gave us a month to get vaccinated, and 75% of us did not get vaccinated.
Doctors, nurses, everybody that worked
Everyone.
there.
So that's anywhere from EVS, which is, like, housekeeping, laundry, kitchen, nurses, PCTs, paramedics, doctors, laboratory, radiology, all of those people, 75% of us chose not to get vaccinated. And we were all without a job. Did you guys, like, see the videos on, like, I think it was, like, New York or something, like, you'd see, like, the staff members, like, crying, like, bawling their eyes out, like...
Yes.
Yeah.
A bunch of them.
You know those videos.
Yeah.
I know I went around TikTok and I was like, oh, like, all these people are dying, blah, blah, blah. And my mom actually sent it to me. My mom's like, what's going on? Like, is this like truly like what you're going through every single day? And I was like, 1,000%. You're walking through the hallway and everyone's crying as staff members, but it's not because the people are like dying. It's because we have no support from our management. We are extremely short-staffed. We're all being overworked. When you're overworked and you're tired, of course, you're going to be emotional. So those videos that like we would see on like the news, it wasn't because they were scared of COVID or whatever it may be. It was because they mentally couldn't like handle the stress anymore. And it was from being short-staffed or management. At least in my experience, it was because we were extremely short-staffed, or we were being overworked, or our management wasn't backing us up. We would tell management we needed something, and they'd be like, cool, like, whatever. Our management didn't come into the hospital. We would have to email them or call them, and they didn't really hear us out. They just kind of, like, blew us off. So that's why, like, I would see those videos, and I was like, that's bullshit. Like, there's absolutely, like, maybe there was someone out there at a hospital that, you know, experienced it. Who knows? In my experience, that was bullshit. We were all, like, stressed out and being emotional because the person that is supposed to, like, help you, like, when you call them and say, I need help,
It's you guys.
isn't there. As a manager, you know, as management, like, higher ups, they didn't step a foot in our hospital. They left us to do it, and then wondered why people were quitting left and right.
And then on top of that, 75% of you said, hasta la vista, baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what did they do? Because I also read some news articles about people that were like, all right, I'm not taking this shit. And they would quit, and they would go work for some like medical staffing company. And they would get sent back to the same fucking hospital, unvaccinated, or even having COVID like you talked about, and working on the fucking floor because they needed people.
Yeah,
and making more money.
I have multiple friends who worked with me, and they chose not to get vaccinated. They went to become a travel nurse, and they're working, you know, someone did go back to like our like old hospital. The other ones went to like bigger cities, or like not a bigger city, but like a different city like Flint or Detroit. And so
Flint, Michigan, and their water.
Yeah. And they went to a different hospital. But if you're contracted through the travel agency, I don't know if it's all of them or just some of them, but the one travel agency that like my friends went to, you didn't have to be vaccinated. So basically whoever signs your paycheck decides if you're vaccinated or not. If the hospital signs your paycheck, you have to be vaccinated. If the travel agency signs your paycheck, you're good to go.
That works for the hospital.
Yeah. It's all about...
But it adds another layer of bureaucracy because now you got to pay all those managers in the company that you work for. And people go, why, you know, I passed out in the emergency room, I get a $12,000 bill. That's why it's all those... The people, you got an inverted pyramid. You got a small group of people actually giving care and dealing with the patients, and you got this giant fucking bureaucracy and shit like that. It's like now instead of working for the hospital, you're working for a company that's working for the hospital. And you're making more. They're charging the hospital more.
Travel nurses make decent money. I know my friend's making more money, almost double her salary, at the same hospital as a travel nurse than she was on the actual floor.
So nothing really changed at the hospital. Everything just got more expensive because you added some more people shuffling paper outside the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And it affected like multiple units. It wasn't just the ER. It wasn't just like the COVID unit. They would I remember I went up to the OB floor one night because they were short-staffed, and they had a COVID patient that was delivering a baby, and they literally treated her like she was like disgust. They made this person deliver a baby because usually you would deliver in one room. We would wait 2 hours for them to, you know, get that skin-to-skin contact because those are really important for the first couple hours of the baby being born. And then move them to a postpartum room. So you'd have the labor room and the postpartum room. They would keep the COVID patient in the labor room. So when they would be in there,
So they take the baby away?
no, they would keep the baby because they assumed the baby had COVID. So the baby couldn't go out to the nurse's station so the mom could sleep or shower or whatever. So the mom was stuck with this baby the full time they were there, which, I mean, regardless, like, she's going to have that responsibility at home. But she never got the option to take it out to the nurse station so she could shower or take a nap or whatever. She was stuck in this room that she delivered in. I don't know if you guys have been in a delivery room, but they're really messy.
Mm-hmm.
And so this mom was stuck in this delivery room for at least 48 hours that she had just
Because it's not just
delivered.
the blood and the placenta, poop comes out and everything else.
Yeah, and you know, us nurses can...
So nobody comes in to clean that shit?
I mean, us nurses can wipe up so much, but the room needs a complete turnover.
And you can't do that while she's staying there?
No, you can't do that while a patient's in there because you have
So
to
it's
take
like
the bed
just
apart.
dumping your insides out and taking the worst beer shit you ever had in your life and being in a small confined space and urine and everything else, and you're in a small confined space for that.
They wouldn't take out the trash, so you'd have like trash like over flowing. You'd have the linen overflowing, so you'd have the linen that you just delivered a baby on from 2 days ago on the floor.
Oh man! And then it's starting to decay and break down. So
Yeah.
it smells like a bucket of fish that's been sitting outside in the sun and for like a couple weeks.
Yeah. So like they would treat these like COVID moms like they were nothing. And that is what hurt me the worst, was seeing like these moms that it's supposed to be the happiest time of their life and they're being treated like they're an alien almost. Like,
Turned out a nightmare.
That's
Yeah.
Just
really
like they
messed up,
did in
though.
communist Russia.
yeah. So I don't know what else to say about that one.
Dude, even
That's what happens
babies,
under
man.
collectivism. You're just a fucking drone. Here's your kid. Here's your room. Shut the fuck up and go in there and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
You
The
were not definitely
the American globalist empire.
Mm-hmm. Now you see why I live down here.
Mm-hmm. But also, you weren't prepared for that. You didn't see that coming. No one saw this coming either.
So there's a lot to
It's-
deal with.
Really?
1,000%. I don't think I'll ever be able to step on the nursing floor again. I wasted all that money to go to school, all that time to go to school, and I'll never be able to be a nurse again. I truly believe that in my heart. I'll never be able to go on the floor again. And then I got into medical sales for about 3 months.
When was this in the timeline?
This was like June of, so like a couple months ago.
June of 2021?
Yeah.
So the medical sale thing, you're like, I'm going right back in the same place again.
Mm-hmm. Just unvaccinated. They were willing to pay me more and not have a vaccination card.
You know what we call that?
Hmm.
That's what we call science.
Yeah.
That's science!
So I went back in.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I went back in to the medical sales, and then I took an interest into health insurance and what they charge people. So I was working on the floor for maybe 3 weeks. Then I went to my new boss and I said I want to be in the office because I want to work with insurance. And he's like, "Are you sure about that?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. I really want to work with insurance." And he was like, "Okay, whatever." And reality is just because I wanted to work from home. I wanted to be able to come down here for the weekend and not have to worry about being back Monday morning. But so I was working with insurance, and then I started seeing all the numbers that people, the hospital was getting. And I started seeing the prices, and it just all started making sense as to how the hospital is able to get away with what they get away with. Because the insurance, it's all fraud. If you go through your insurance for a prescription, your insurance pays double the price. If you were to buy it without insurance, you're going to be paying maybe, say the prescription is $50, $75, and with your insurance you're going to pay 25% copay. And I mean, that's saying if you have say Blue Cross, not Medicaid, Medicare, say you have Blue Cross, you're going to pay 25% copay until your deductible's met. And then, but if you were to buy it with no insurance, you're going to be paying $15. So you're paying more with your insurance than you are without insurance. I'm not saying that's for all prescriptions, but for the most, like, majority, it's that way. Your medical equipment, your walkers, your hospital beds, your
you know what we call that?
what?
That's what we call fascism. And so Mussolini, who was the fascist dictator who basically created fascism in Italy and was Hitler's ally, he said fascism is the perfect merger of state and corporate interests.
Mm-hmm. I believe it because I saw the numbers and I couldn't believe that you're paying all this money. Like, I was paying so much money for my Blue Cross health insurance, and with how Blue Cross works is you have a certain deductible. So say your deductible is $500. You have to pay $500 before your copay kicks in. So you're paying so much money for your prescriptions, your like doctor visits, your say you broke your leg and you need crutches. Like, you're paying so much money for all this stuff. Whereas if you just went and got the medication from the pharmacy and said you don't have insurance or you don't want to go through insurance, you're saving money. You broke your leg and you need crutches, you go to, a home health equipment store, it's so much cheaper. But you go through your insurance, they charge double to triple the price. And it comes right out of your pocket, but people aren't educated enough to know that they're literally losing money by having the health insurance. Not all the case, but for a lot of the normal prescriptions, like say, you get strep throat and you need penicillin or whatever it may be, they're taking your money plus some and laughing in your face. And, it just baffles me that people haven't realized that yet.
Damn. Lighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who said that?
No, I don't.
Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers. All I gotta say is, Macy, that was fucking amazing. That was fucking amazing. Just the way that, because that was such great inside information. The way you phrased it was just, you got the inside view on the whole thing.
No one has that inside view unless you were there. Mm-hmm.